Greetings and welcome to Liminal Light, a show that explores the languages of myth and star, earth, sky, tongue, and spirit through weekly astrological forecasts. I'm your host, Chris. Enjoy. In the third decan of Scorpio, Jupiter is no longer the ruler of a face, but has dignity by bound to hold on to in the first 4 degrees. Mainly, Jupiter is the presenter of opportunity and promoter of coherence. He helps us understand all the components that make up something and how they all come together to make a whole. Holistic systems, judicial systems, theology, spiritual philosophies, the bigger pictures, so that we can expand things once we understand where we can add on to. He assists us by bringing in opportunities we might take advantage of. Rather than giving money or gold directly, he might say, "Here's an idea," or sending someone who says, "How'd you like a job?" Jupiter's optimistic, no matter where he's focused. So focused on the libidinous and depraved territory of the third decan of Scorpio, he tries to make the experience of satiation loops mind-expanding and somehow part of our greater development as knowledgeable people. This reminds us of Mars's binge and purge mode and the third phase, but much less violent. Instead, it is like visiting a drug-addicted wasteland to learn more about the world and grasp its problems firsthand, probably to then attempt to raise further awareness and establish aid channels. Or learn what not to do, how to avoid such depravity by remaining virtuous, being scared straight, or at least learning techniques of temperance. Jupiter might offer in this position the street education that separates sheltered chumps from old salts. As Mercury conjoins Pluto on January 24th, he stares into a void within the architecture, the darkened emptiness where there is no structure, and to the unnerving mystery of dark matter, our fears of lack of stabilization and foundation, a barrier where there is only an abyss beyond. Surely there is more out there of articulate complexity beyond our comprehension, although currently to us it is unknown and presently unknowable. It is like the final sequences of 2001: A Space Odyssey, connecting back to the black object in the opening scenes. As Pluto is the final body or sphere in our solar system before heliopause, the electromagnetic outer shell of our solar system, Pluto represents the known from the unknown, what is native to what is alien, what is part of our outermost holistic completeness, and what is utterly alien. This is very typical experience in transits as an underworld journey, and often manifests in lack of knowledge of how things will ultimately turn out, coupled with completely unprecedented circumstances. With nothing familiar or stable to grasp onto, you still have to proceed with life, though no strategy or foresight is possible. Often Pluto is associated with vast swaths of time, or eternity itself, as well as power and manipulation, as the holding of people's ultimate fears is a position of power, even an obsession, as evidenced in Space Odyssey, as well as in the continuing subtext. This is especially true in Capricorn, which is entirely about hierarchy, material, structure, stratagem, foundation, empire, and management. Today, this might be a detailed look or observance of cryptocurrencies, or the deep state and how much we truly don't know, ideas or data relating to how society is manipulated en masse by shadow corporations or anarchist capitalist elites. As Mercury is also the planet of the trickster and the magician, this remains a situation that can be used to autonomous advantage in some way, and brings to mind such contemporary examples as Peter Gray's call for an apocalyptic witchcraft, or that in a world of irreversible ecological damage and nebulous, faceless, and massive manipulative control, we are, to a certain degree, able to manifest as we please within the hull of the sunken ship of the geopolitical world, i.e., no one is forcing us into 50s-style conformity, and there are plenty of loopholes and vectors not monitored. In our age of self-initiated exploitation through social media, we forget that the monitored world is something we can simply put down and enter into an autonomy disconnected from the greater digital network. Alternatively, rather than return to primal wilderness, the ultra-sly and tech-savvy might turn to the media monster itself and attempt outlets of subterfuge and manipulation on their own. Mythologically, Pluto is Hades and Mercury Hermes, so a meeting between the two figures can be imagined in these classical forms. In Capricorn, this could be Hades taking Hermes on a detailed tour of the underworld caverns, while he composes well-labeled maps. This is a very useful thing to acquire for a mortal who will inevitably die and then suddenly have no idea where they are or what to do. A bit of previewing this world ahead of time and making some connections on the other side will surely facilitate the afterlife orientation while still physically manifest. It's very Capricornian thinking, similar in a way to a retirement plan, but much more ambitious. Although Mercury visits the underworld with each retrograde, and so this may be something a bit different. This is a brief event rather than an extensive tour, as Mercury will move right past Pluto within the day, although the moments when Mercury and Pluto are sharing significations might be significant. Pluto does have a transformational, and I use this term with a grain of salt, evolutionary effect on people. After Pluto, consciousness's end, you cannot go back. Once you've come to know what you know, once you've seen through the veil, the door next becomes shut behind you, and there is no going back. Reality is utterly changed. Venus and the Sun reached Cazimi on the same degree as Pluto on the 9th, but that was both in our identification with the Plutonian and within our attractions and sensory perceptions. We could glimpse and feel the unknown and powerful, vast beyond, but not ultimately seize it. Mercury is our messenger and translator. So this time, rather than just a glimpse or a feel, you might be able to receive some operative information of lasting significance, especially if you're listening. Hades and Pluto's meeting coincides with the moon reaching the second quarter phase in Taurus. The moon ramps up the energy as she waxes to the second quarter, mostly felt in the inertia of emotions, moods, needs, wants, dreams, and streams of conscious thoughts. This is in Taurus, her exaltation, and a most stable position, as well as an earth sign, so she'll be in a relative harmony with the pair in Capricorn. In Taurus, the emphasis is on organic rhythm, like natural cycling at a sustainable pace, going with the flow, moving steadily ahead. The ramp-up might seem to coincide and even be in reaction to the Plutonian dispatches Mercury delivers. Taurus's organic pace then is lucky, as the message might be otherwise too frightening if we weren't in such a grounded mood. On January 25th, Mercury moves into a dignity of face, transitioning into the third decan of Capricorn, where he holds court by the triplicity system of assignment. Being a planet that rules an earth sign, since the third decan is about managing what you have already created and amassed, Mercury gets to strut his stuff by using his command of details and organization, communication, and quick thinking. This may be a good time to get your affairs in order, utilizing a clever mind to strategize problems away. It might be good simply for understanding what you're up against in life and what all your assets and resources are. You may also find you are temporarily better at, or at least more interested in, all things chess-like, as well as the chess game of life. This can be a lonely decan, as these kinds of strategy engagements and managerial attentions tend to keep us in our personal offices for much longer hours. But Capricorn is a sign attached to the land, and Mercury is prone to travel, so strolls around your kingdom are highly recommended, and even sojourns elsewhere, if you can convince yourself it's a business venture, is the cause of the trip, and not a pleasure cruise or vacation. Mercury, as we know from Virgo, can be a stickler for details, obsessive-compulsive in nature, and in Capricorn, this is about the rules, or sticking to the plan. But both are handy for continual upward motion of achievement, but try to watch for setting up strategies that are too rigid, as high-tension flexibility is the future, whereas brick and mortar tends to be what composes the structures of the past. Capricorn is both history-gazing and structure-concerned, so there's an opportunity to play both if you keep your wits about you and don't get caught up in the stacks of minutiae. On January 26th, as Mars moves from his domicile in Scorpio into Sagittarius, he becomes restricted to dignity of 1 decan and 1 bound. Really not too bad, and perhaps a relief for many after his tear through Scorpio, which probably, thanks to Jupiter, has seemed largely about self-improvement. In Sagittarius, he becomes less concerned with cutting habits and burning away tendencies, and more into the philosophy of actions and agenda. This aspect reminds me of Crowley, as will plays a large role, and Crowley's phalli, semen, seed-oriented cultus, which fits its worldview on everything it looks at, perhaps the very functionality of its magic, sees the world as do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. Sounds very Mars Sagittarius, a world of opportunities, if you dare to grasp them, that may lead at lightning speeds to consciousness expanding and being transcending goals, without even having to practice permanent penances. Instead of dedicating to the perpetual abstinences of Eastern philosophies or more mystical Occidental theology, one just directs true will at divine alignments, as a centaur aiming its arrow. The world of debacle, debate, and argument, as well as a wake of scandal and unarguable influence of Crowley, are also hallmarks of Mars in Sagittarius' first phase. So perhaps let the whole of Crowleyanity be the fable you reference in this time, to weigh how you can use martial prowess to win fabulous fame and notoriety, with or without making an impossible mess out of many lives. Seemingly complementarily, Venus progresses into middle Aquarius at this time. In Aquarius' second phase, she is like the lover you only ever see occasionally by odd chance. At other times, they remain a total mystery, a figment phantom, and perhaps they don't really exist. Even though you've been to their apartment, you don't know where it is, and your memory of arriving there took you through strange and abstract steps, whose convoluted sequence complemented the meta-decor and the proto-functionality of her living spaces, which were much more conceptual than comfortable, and exotic in a way you could barely put your finger on, like a massive library on a zip drive, with monitors built into stations on the walls of the hallways and beside doors, so you could read any title you could possibly think of on the fly, in transition between rooms, but no books or bookshelves could be found anywhere. Venus in Aquarius is aesthetic and chic on the outside. It's conceptual and challenging. It's not supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to be provocative. Its intellectual nature is what is elegant. Its cultural fractalization that is sublime. And its dispersing spell of logical stretching. More time may be spent trying to integrate the fringe, innovative, experimental with the regular and practical, like experimental wallets, innovative pockets, psychologically designed hold tone music, mathematically perfect spice drawer organization. But these curated realities can drive us into separation, where only in defined hubs do we plug in. Aquarius is weird in its way, but it's still Saturn's turf. You have to think of a box to think outside of a box. Venus is certainly abstract and conceptual art to the max in every way you can think of, and especially the art that you only really think of and barely has a physical basis, or music which is purely a single tone, but with 20 pages of liner notes. Not to say it is strictly minimalist, only that it is challenging and unorthodox, but bridging the gap from the outer realms to the center, like Lamont Young's dream house in the heart of NYC. This is science-y art. In this age, something may be transhumanism or soft robotic. In a previous, it might have been the futurists, Fluxus, Dada, or the Discordians, TAZ or TOPY. But in their gallery and exhibition aspects rather than their obscure personal explorations. The second decan connects the fringe frontiers and exterior experiments back to the center space. With Mercury, this looks like the science results listed in Harper's findings. Where with Venus, this is what of the outsider's zeitgeist is presented to the bourgeoisie. What elements of the avant-garde funnel into the monoculture, even if they are entirely unaware. This is, of course, again, Venus as art and aesthetic, as she rules what we are attracted to, what we are drawn to, find beauty, and where we derive pleasure. So she is also the planet of love and desire, conjugal, carnal, and venereal affairs. Aquarian periods are marked by invention and experimentation. The advice that should follow you into your bedrooms is both obvious and by nature continually undefined. All right, welcome back to the show, Bonnie.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Today we have Katrina Hohowski, the co-owner of Moody Lords and creator of Ancestral Thread Tea. Hello, Katrina.
Hello.
And we have Stefan, Christoph, painter, musician, woodworker. Hi.
Hello.
Together they are Birchings, whose music we are graced to have on the show this afternoon.
Yeah, it's some of my favorite. Before we hit record, we've been sitting here and listening to it. Do you want to tell us some about the instrumentation?
Well, yeah, that'd be great. I'm generating mostly tones and layers, textures from a kind of cheap Casio keyboard that's been in my arsenal for a couple centuries, it feels like, but probably like more like 3 or 4 years, and I can't believe it's lasted this long. But the special element
it does seem like centuries.
It does.
Yeah,
right?
I've seen it around for a long time.
It's I guess because I made a handy bag to transport it in, so it's survived many a jaunt in the car and tour. But the special element of Birchings is more what Katrina is slinging.
Well, I got these amazing quartz crystal singing bowls that are really a life changer and like a musical changer as well. So that's what you're hearing in the background.
It's not
incredible.
Yeah.
And then there's some field recordings in this too, right?
Yeah, there is. I think in the section where you guys were giving the weekly forecast, there was some vocal audio that we recorded when we were over in Germany at this massive stone monument / mausoleum in Leipzig. That was a very disorienting and colossal experience to be inside it. It was you could only probably stand about 45 minutes in there, and I wanted to get out.
Yeah, it's crazy. When I was posting the forecast today, it was from last week by the time this hits the air, but I called it Ventilate the Monument, and which really just is like in reference to a lot of this Saturn and Capricorn stuff going on with with like stone and materials, and especially the second decan of Capricorn, where things are getting planning big. I mean, Saturn's going to be in the first decan for a while, but all the other planets going through, especially Mercury, and it's starting to do that organization of monumental works, even if that's in your own life, where you're temporarily taking on a bigger management aspect of your reality, whether or not that's like something you want to do or something you don't want to do. Sometimes it's a burden. You're like, all right, it could be stupid. It could be like, okay, I'm going to get the car fixed up. But if that's like, takes like an insane amount of like, I'm going to get all my resources together and make this happen, call in additional labor. But yeah, that thinking big and organizing big. And I started Googling based on that title and came across a picture of what you're talking about, where you went, and that was what I was going to choose. I ended up not putting it there because I didn't have time to research it, and I ended up putting something from the catacombs. But yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about it? Because it looks completely insane. I mean, or just like a word people can search for where they might find it, because it's really a crazy, striking image.
It was in Leipzig, Germany.
Yeah.
And the inside, I mean, it's thematically, it is designed to make you feel very small.
Yeah.
As a human, you feel very fragile in there, and it is colossal with the. It has a slight romantic, almost non-human flavor about the figures that are represented, where it's a lot of equestrian and warrior themes with a good amount of death flavoring in there, because it is a giant monument to a massive loss of human life that occurred in that region.
And are there people buried there? Like, is there remains of people?
We couldn't really tell. I think it's more of a monument talisman to the people that lost their lives there. I don't actually know if anyone's actually interned under the foundation, because you can actually go all the way down into the structural base of it underground, literally, and it's pretty fantastic. There's some dioramas of things that they dug up when they were erecting it, and it feels a lot older than it actually is. Kind of timeless because of its grandeur.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's perfect imagery for this period. I'll put an image on it on the YouTube version of what we're talking about right now. But yeah, that's kind of like a backline of this week, just to keep in mind, that this is the week. On the 18th, we have Mercury going into the second decan of Capricorn and sextiling, Mars sextiling Chiron at the same time. And then we have, so we're not going to talk a lot about Capricorn necessarily in what's shifting here. Oh no, that happens right before this week. So yeah, on the 25th, Mercury goes into the third decan. So this week is mostly with Mercury there in the second decan, and that's that monumental building energy. But if there are things across the course of this week that are just kind of in the signs that they're in and in the decans that they're in, just cruising across. So the major shifts, a lot of major shifts occurred at the end of last week, where the Sun went into Aquarius and Venus went into Aquarius. And now on a smaller level, we have the first day of this week is the 21st, when Jupiter goes into the third decan of Scorpio. And, Jupiter's going to be in and out of all the decans of Scorpio over the course of the year, because Jupiter's in Scorpio for 13 months, mainly hanging out in the second decan, having a lot to do with that kind of interlocking, like that moment when a predator seizes its prey, or like in mating season where the mating is happening, and then there's that lock of it's like two people intensely talking and tearing down barriers between one another. Scorpio doesn't like small talk, wants to get right down to business or nothing at all and go deeper and deeper with people. And in the third decan, it has a lot to do with we had different examples of what we were tossing around, but it's really like kind of going into.
Do you want to talk about the Gale Faith Edwards?
Right, totally.
You said it's not exactly but you can talk about this afterwards.
Right,
but Gale Faith Edwards went to the site of the Union Carbide spill in Bhopal, India, and was 20 years after the spill, and was working with patients who had skin diseases, and was also teaching herbal medicine. And she had it was a great opportunity for her. She felt good to be there, but then upon returning found that she basically had every single skin disease that she was trying to help cure. And so she spent the next 5 years battling these skin diseases, and of course successfully, and therefore gained this incredible knowledge and firsthand experience as to how to counter such diseases. But I thought that Kevin Burke says that, he says, as Jupiter wanders peregrine in Scorpio, it must ultimately learn that growth can happen on the surface and at a steady and enjoyable pace. It doesn't always have to involve psychological trauma. So it could go both ways. I mean, this...
Yeah, we were saying this year already, it seems like Jupiter is being more helpful thus far. It hasn't but it definitely is concentrating on trauma. Like, you know, everyone was talking about right when Jupiter went into Scorpio that it must be related to the whole Me Too movement. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like opening up previous traumas in people's life and then doing something positive with that, you know. And that, like, in the third decan, it's a lot about going in, you know, the third decan is about satiation to satiation to satiation. Like after that lock of mating, or after that lock of a predator seizing its prey and feeding, there's like a time where it's full, or a time where it's carnally satiated, but then in not too long, the desire comes again. It's kind of that period.
Those are pretty transitory feelings for anything that's alive on planet Earth.
Yeah.
It's like that moment of like satiation where you're like, all right, everything's kind of met, you know, but I'm still awake or I'm conscious, but I'm not fretting about something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and so Jupiter there is kind of saying like, yeah, this is kind of a depraved area, but Jupiter always offers opportunities to learn and opportunities to grow. So I think in the forecast I said it's like someone learning their street smarts, you know, like some like opposed to someone just like being completely sheltered, you know, being like I've hung out with a hobo, you know, like I've gotten down with a crackhead, like I've seen what life is really like, you know, like and because that's different there. If you haven't, you know,
I've been those.
I've been those people. Yeah.
Not me personally, but you know, like, I've tried that.
Of them. Yeah. But and then the other version is like learning not what to do, you know, being like, oh yeah, I've seen how like people can really screw their lives up by all of this depraved behavior, and I'm not going to do that. And then the third kind of is the middle way, like learning temperance, you know, which, yeah, I don't always, you know, a tarot trump doesn't always jump out, but I definitely saw like kind of temperance as a lesson in that. If temperance is what is one of the things that Jupiter can teach as like the guru of Scorpio 3.
Yeah, you can have that wine, but you know, if you dilute it a bit, maybe with some herbal decoctions,
yeah,
you know, you can get that middle ground.
Which I always think is really fascinating when, you know, they said like the way the Greeks and the Romans would see other cultures that wouldn't dilute the wine, you know, and they'd be like, oh, they're really scary. Yeah, they're horrifying.
Yeah. Like Germanic culture, like they drink that straight. That's pretty awful.
Yeah. Because at the time it wasn't the wine that we have today. It was more like pine sap, like black pine sap with like that was like the strength, more like 30% alcohol probably or something, you know.
Yeah, it was probably thick.
Yeah, it was kind of like an intoxicating jelly, you know.
Then we have on Wednesday, the 24th, Mercury conjunct Pluto, which we have completely unprecedented circumstances. I know that we're talking about the future, but I've already been feeling that. I'm sure everybody has been. I've heard a lot of people say this has never happened before, and then that requires you having to use some resources to figure out how to counter this new problem.
Yeah, like, should we put in this safeguard? And you're like, why? That's never gone wrong
not
before.
Happen,
then it immediately goes wrong, you know? I think that's really coming from this Pluto, this theme of like unprecedented. Have no idea that this situation was going to come up, and then it's gonna take like new thinking to figure it out. I keep referring to Pluto and Capricorn as like a giant black hole in the structure, in the hyper structure of reality and in society itself. Definitely, it's like not having any idea where the world is headed right now. And I kept liking it to 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's like those end scenes. Where like he gets in the ship and tries to escape Hal, and then that kind of thematically loops back and makes you think about the beginning and like what is the black object. That's kind of Pluto's role in the universe, but that Pluto is in the house with Saturn. He's going to keep coming up, and especially right now because it's Capricorn season, but that for the next 3 years we're going to see these like unprecedented kind of gaping holes in the structure of things. I was wondering, have you done any Saturn paintings recently?
No, not since I did a disc maybe 3 years ago for my own dwelling space that was of the Black Sun.
Oh, yeah.
With the reverse Sylvia Lowe runes. And it wasn't until later that I learned that basically the Black Sun is the idea that Saturn could be, we might have Saturn as like this primordial memory that it may have been a secondary sun to our planet when everything was conjoining and still spinning in a very hot way, and it became a brown dwarf, I think, and then it got shot out further into the firmament. So maybe initially when the Earth was still very young, apparently Saturn might have been like within a more visible area in the sky.
Yeah.
It's associated with like north and like cold and basically like a night sun. So. But no, I haven't. I really like propitiating Saturn and working with the planet, and
definitely a good time for that.
Yeah, that's what I was asking, because I know your work is very talismanic, and I was just like, okay, let's see how this goes, because I like Saturn. I have Saturn in the first house in exaltation, so it's a good Saturn. It's conjunct Mercury. I was like, Saturn's my man. I love discipline. I love, like sticking to it. I love, and then
He's like, really? Well, check it out.
Yeah. And then
you're gonna love this.
Yeah, totally. And then it's really been kicking my ass since he went into Capricorn, and I was like, oh, this is really surprising. I need to like up my Saturn game in a big way, which has been cool to be like, okay, well now I have to get really much more serious about him,
Yeah. So the Taskmaster for sure is a bit of could have some a riding crop and some spurs now and then, which is good. It's not always just sits on your head and pummels you into the whatever the mud. But
yeah, it's like he's gonna get on top of you anyway.
he's gonna ride you.
Yeah. You might as well be a good horse.
Yeah, it's the truth of being a amicable and steady riding component, especially if you're getting ridden.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do a separate kind of article or maybe episode just about techniques of propitiation, and maybe if you might even want to like supply some images for that.
Yeah, that'd be great. I just recommend that. Are we allowed to give shout-outs to a publication?
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Just everyone should seek out the Greatness of Saturn by Robert Svoboda.
Yes,
It's
totally.
great. It's just, and you learn a lot about. It's more mythologically based. You can learn a bit of Yodish astrology, which is Indian or Vedic astrology. That on a topical level, it's like you get like these depictions of the planets, and they kind of are in humanoid form with power animals around them. There's nice charts at the back that give you the corresponding days, colors, even things that you could use to propitiate them. And not just Saturn, but other days of the week corresponding with planets. So it's a good one.
Yeah, I definitely like if we do this future episode or article thing, I'll put like a little list of books too, because they're the Vedic stuff is definitely the best at the propitiation element. The Western magical tradition has a good take on like how to use the energies, like, you know, how to essentially harvest them. But and you know, there's protection amulets and stuff, but the Vedic stuff is very effective to be like Saturn, the nodes like Rahu and Ketu, the north node and south node, the stuff that's really gonna beat you up, you know. It like they've really concentrated on lessening that impact as much as possible. So that's good to look into for sure.
That book was pretty useful for last summer's eclipse too. The solar eclipse was just as like you could keep checking in on it and be like, okay, we're gonna get this ready to propitiate Rahu. Then you could use that book just to double check. Be like, okay, yeah, got like the colors, the proper metal, and even like think about animals.
Yeah, like someone has like a K2 thing coming up that I was reading for, and I was because there's a K2 eclipse coming up the week after this is recorded on January 31st, and getting someone who has that prominent in their chart ready. And one of the things that came up was giving stuff to dogs, like being nice to dogs and donating money and time to shelters, and you know, that's all always great for Hecate stuff too. And then seeing how Hecate and Kronos are related, and you know, her triple nature, you can almost sometimes think of her as like this female version of like Kronos, and then the two nodes, you know, like there's so many of the significations cross over. But I'll put that all in there too, because I like grouping them together. This is a heavy eclipse year as well, so we're gonna get like, it's really good to do Saturn propitiation and eclipse propitiation this year to be prepared. So maybe we'll do that, because I like, Stefan, how we had spoken before when we had put together that presentation last year before the eclipse about and you had mentioned that you think of them as like a heavy gang, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's
like
really great.
Left hand, right hand, or the left hand, right hand man.
Yeah.
Saturn's crew.
But I thought it was cool as a heavy gang that they're like the mafia, you know, that they're like, as long as when they come around and they ask for their pay, you pay up. They're actually helpful, you know, like you're like, my business is doing great, you know, but the guy on the street who didn't pay up, like, you know, his business gets run out of town.
Yeah, indeed. I think that's a bit of like why people get intimidated too, is just that unknown, or how to go about even just communicating with these currents or flows of the planets. How a lot of people are like, oh, Saturn's like real. Oh, your Saturn return. Oh, you better stick your head in the sand or whatever. But
that's the worst thing you can do with Saturn.
You probably should build some kind of relationship with
Saturn wants you to face him, you know, and I've been looking at people's charts like that, you know, a great majority of the people that ask to get their chart read are having a Saturn return, and I've had like the people in there, you know, between 27 and 30, and I've been getting people who are like in their late 50s, early 60s, you know. It's generally the time when people are like, what is going on, you know? And then some people just are finishing them up, or just have finished them up. You can tell if they didn't face what Saturn's lesson was. Stuff is really hard now still. Like, it's like, you know, you're supposed to have caught up with that lesson by the end, and that tempers you, but you can see he really drives people down who are not going to learn the lesson at all, you know. And that, so it's the faster you can do what he wants, the easier it's going to be. Katrina, I know we had talked before, but it was interesting what you were saying about as someone who buys clothes for Moody Lords and buys items, like seeing things that were coming up along astrological trends. Right? Didn't you mention that?
Well, I don't really know what was happening in the sky, but copper.
Right now.
But it's like constant copper bracelet. Like what is the message in this? And a lot of people I've been meeting are a bit older, you know. And they're, you know, and they're, you know, they have all this knowledge and wisdom, and I'm there buy things from them, but I'm getting so much more than like just this exchange of material. It's I don't know. It's just a lesson every time I go out looking for stuff. And so let's see, copper. What is this?
Yeah, and copper is so like so Venus and Capricorn right now. Like Venus and Capricorn is really focused on the materials, like going from like the whole like animal, vegetable, mineral down further into the mineral to like what can be made with them. Like Venus is always like jewelry, and yeah, Venus is always copper corresponding to, it's very Venus and Capricorn. And then like what you're saying too about meeting older people and gaining wisdom is very Capricornian, very looking to the past and looking to maturity. Saturn loves maturity. I think that probably also has to do with that it's just that it's Capricorn season too, that the sun is there, that vision element is there. And the Kazemi happened in Capricorn. Like this is where Venus got refreshed, which is really interesting that she gets refreshed in Capricorn, then immediately goes into Aquarius after, you know, that she kind of has like this, there's this Venusian seed in Earth and then immediately moves into air. It's really interesting. Yeah, I'm really curious to see how her time in Aquarius pans out. Aquarius is always really bizarre. I was, I always struggle to like explain it without sounding like I'm down on it, which I'm not, but it's like, it's so abstract, that it's hard to define exactly what it is. And it's ruled by Saturn, but it's, it's Aquarius is like the outsider sign. So it's always like, you have to have a box to be outside of the box, which is, it's ruled by Saturn, but it's Saturn defining that boundary and putting you on the outside of the boundary rather than on the inside. So there's the amount of like that you're exiled to the outside, but that you prefer to be out there. Like it's opposite Leo. So Leo is always like, I want to be in the center. I want to be at the center of attention. Like I always want to be downtown. I never want to be out in like the boondocks. Why would we go out there? There's nothing out there. This is where it's at. Where Aquarius is like, I don't want to go down there. I don't want to go downtown. Like that's horrible. I don't want to be at the center of it. I don't want to be at Times Square on New Year's.
Yeah.
Like no way. Like I want to be, in some far-flung kind of.
That could be actually like a personal litmus test. It's like on New Year's, do you want to be at Times Square, dead center? Like,
Yeah, like
a dosha test, and you're like, oh, you're Catholic.
Rent a cabin like 1,000 miles from anyone?
Yeah, totally. Like it's like binary. Or do you want to be asleep before midnight and like not wear earplugs?
Not partake.
Take like sleeping pills so you don't hear the fireworks or whatever.
I often don't want to, but I just end up falling asleep before midnight anyway.
At like 9 o'clock
Yeah.
then.
Not really a deal.
Yeah. It can be frustrating.
So we're moving from Pitta into Kapha season, from Cardinal to Fixed with this Capricorn to Aquarius season.
Yeah, which is so odd. We were talking about it in the car, and this is the thing about investigating these, the more Vedic and Indian astrology. If you have any basis in Western astrology, trying to fit your mind into both at once will just like really stretch your perceptions out in a way that makes you have to think two ways about something, and it reveals a lot of the dynamism and things, that you're like, well, that's crazy because, how could Scorpio be Kapha? And Scorpio always wants to be intense, where like, I was saying about like Taurus is like, no, let's take it slow, let's take our time, we'll make this change, but like eventually. And Scorpio is like, no, let's just throw a bomb at this thing right now, just blow it up and change it immediately.
Yeah, that seems almost opposite of Kapha, which is...
Yeah.
Well, it has to do more with the part of the season, like Aquarius is winter. Like, same with Taurus and Scorpio.
Like they're mid-season.
Yeah, they are like kind of the apex of that season. And so that's really where they're not like
because they're all fixed signs.
exactly.
Yeah, like they're like Scorpio only wants to be intense. He doesn't want to be not intense.
Exactly.
You know,
like Aquarius only wants to
the
stay.
outside,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Leo only wants to be in the center of attention. You know, so it's really interesting to be like that could mean I don't want to be moved from my intensity for some people, but that that it takes on this kapha role of being like, don't move me, don't jostle me, which is interesting, but it makes sense for this period because it's like deep winter,
Yeah, the prediction is it's an astrological winter too. Get the Austin Comic shout out in there. That he's likening it to a doom metal bass line.
Yeah.
It's in Capricorn.
Right.
I can get to that. I don't know if other people can. But yeah.
For sure, it's fun to slow it down and make it cold and slow. Yeah, it just takes a minute to get into the pace. Like to get used to to find the bass line.
Right.
Like you can know we're about to play really slow music, but you don't know exactly what the tempo is going to be until the music starts.
Yeah.
Or even just, if you think about the temperatures, when it first becomes under freezing, you're like, oh my goodness, it's so cold. And then we had all that time of 9-degree weather, and then it's in the 20s, and you think it feels tropical almost.
Yeah, I was outside all day. I even said it was hot.
Yeah, that
no, that's
adjustment.
Not
Yeah,
that's not the right
yeah.
word. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because we're going into like a solar low too, right? That it's like we're entering the period where it should be an ice age, and that's people have been saying that for a long time. It's like, yeah, it should be an ice age right now. It should be coming an ice age, and that's like now we've caught up with it. It's like it's right now. This is going to be the lowest
In 10,000
cycle of the sun. Yeah, I think in a 10,000-year period.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be colder. It's going to get colder, and that's crazy that it's right on time with Saturn's return, which is every 30 years.
Is it crazy?
No, it's not crazy. Yeah, you're crazy. But yeah, Saturn returns about every 30 years, every 28, 30 years to Capricorn. And one thing that I was looking into that the other day and seeing so 1989 was the last time. That's like when the Iron Curtain begins to drop, which had a lot to do with Uranus also being in Capricorn and Neptune that really pierced and dissolved that wall. It's also Tiananmen Square, and so communism finally was like, oh no, we're not gonna win, we've lost, because the free markets were excelling due mostly to information technology, like in computing, like computer technology in the USA and Japan, which is very similar to now, where we're definitely on the verge of some sort of digital information culture that we don't even really understand yet. Everyone kind of knows this is kind of going nuts, and we don't know what's going to happen next. With people,
are you talking about digital currency?
Yeah, cryptocurrencies and AIs and holographic entertainment, and it's there's obviously something about to happen next that kind of replaces where we're at. Before 1989 was 1959. That's when Fidel Castro came to power in Cuba, and Hawaii and Alaska both became states for the first time. And it's also the first time a human died of HIV that recorded and known, which is crazy. That's 1959, and then 1989 is obviously ground zero of the AIDS crisis.
Right.
So
we just watched How to Survive a Plague. That is an excellent movie for anybody who
devastating
wants to be.
emotional.
Yeah, exactly. But really important to watch, just as far as what people can do when they put their minds to it. Perhaps a different time, though.
Yeah, no, definitely worth watching in this period. But it'll prepare yourself to be moved and for a dark ride, But and then so in 1959 we also have the first modern computer ever invented and the first microchip ever invented, and then in 1989, the Iron Curtain drops because of computer technology booming the free market,
right?
Which could never happen in communism because it's a planned economy. you know? So it was like that, like people putting private money into like, and taking risks with these computer stuff that drove it so hard. And so it's so similar to now with like Russia and China is all in the news, and then, you know, a turning point for computers, and the AIDS crisis in both of these. And then there are people talking about like that plague is back now, and then there's like this flu killing a ton of people.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just very fitting. Dark themes, you know.
Very dark. Absolutely.
But world changing, like feet changing themes, you know, like it's in the money, it's in the money and in the health, like it's in the body and it's in the materials being in.
Which money is also associated with Saturn.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So there's like those thematic themes that maybe the whole idea is to learn from things that have toppled in this time of transition, where like maybe you shouldn't be so rigid.
Yeah.
And you should maybe be able to, maybe with the Uranus influence, you could ride the transitions a little easier.
Yeah,
it's interesting though, because like
I was thinking that too, like flexibility is the future, like high tensile flexibility.
Yeah,
like it's just as strong and just as structural, but it's not necessarily like stacked stones.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Yeah, like the stacked stones could possibly like roll to somewhere else and then like realign themselves and make another structure.
Yeah.
But they sure do last a long time, those stack stones.
Yeah, I mean they're great.
But we have reached the
yeah, we're
end.
running out of time to like.
Yeah.
quickly-
If you have some more, hit them. If you
What's
have some
that?
more like days up your sleeve.
Days. Oh, I mean what else we got really fast?
Oh, there's
Mercury going into the third decan of Capricorn, which is he rules the third decan of Capricorn, so that's a really good time to get your scene in order and try to manage your stuff. He's going to sextile Jupiter on the 25th, so that's a good period. Around then, like 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, right around then. If you're looking for Mercury elections, it's the slim chance that you're going to get some for the moment. And then on the 26th this is a big deal. Mars goes into Sagittarius finally, after being in Scorpio since November. So we finally get out of like this supercharged Mars, which in a way didn't seem as violent as I thought it was going to be. I think definitely because he's been in the house with Jupiter the whole time. So Jupiter's constantly trying to make things into like an opportunity. And it seemed really a lot about tons of people going kind of buck wild about different forms of self-improvement. And like a lot of people quitting stuff, you know, like severing elements of their life and
maybe even of their identity.
Yeah, of their identity, yeah.
And that relates to the fluidity. You have to have that fluidity. You can't identify with something that's bad for you.
Right.
I mean, you can.
You can,
People do,
yeah.
but it'd be better to
Yeah, unless you're going to go all the way and
let
be,
that
like, kinda
go.
gory.
Absolutely.
Yeah, quit being so juvenile. Just go all the way, or just
Be
go home.
courageous.
Right. Yeah.
You heard it here.
Yeah, that's actually a good.
Liminal Light.
That's a good point to leave it off. So we're going to say thank you to you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
we'll definitely have you on again. We should definitely chat more extensively. We're
Yeah, I would love to be on again.
starting to have guests return more often so we can extend these and extend conversations outside of this and have them available in longer form, which I'll talk more about in the future once I get that set up. But thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good week. Thank you for listening to Liminal Light. Our theme music was composed by the ever-talented Asa Irons. Today's background sound was created by Birchings, who are also our guests, Katrina Hohowski and Stefan Christoph. I'm your host, Chrissy Pucciere Rapucci, and you can find me at atavisceral.com. ATAVISCERAL.com, where I post articles and forecasts, offer chart readings, talismanic concoctions, occult services, tarot, divination, and more. Per canem.